NX.
Thank you. And welcome everybody. And I'm glad that you all could come. And actually it is true, this may be my last public demonstration of NX ever, because I'm retiring in 71 days. And I have one event scheduled next week when I'm up to my alma mater, where it all started, involved in an academic activity, but I'm not going to be doing any demonstrations there. I'm actually a judge in a senior engineering contest in which they're using NX as in their curriculum. And I go every year. Actually, I go every spring and every fall. In the spring, they do the School of Engineering and a freshman class, and in the fall, in the university, or this, the School of Technology in the spring, and School of Engineering in the fall. And so I'm going up there for the senior mechanical engineering, senior engineering competition, which, like I said, I do every year. Okay, to get started, as mentioned, my name is John Baker. I work for Siemens. I have been working for the company over 35 years. I started working in engineering actually almost 50 years ago. It'll be 50 years this June, this coming June, that I started working as a draftsman. I work as a machine designer. I actually am educated. My degree is in machine design. And I actually worked as a machine designer for 14 years, 11 years on the board, and 3 years using Unigraphics, the precursor to NX. What you saw on the screen earlier, the first video that you saw, that was what UG looked like when I started using it 38 years ago. Like I said, back when CAD was still steam powered. And but it was real. It was very productive for us. We purchased it in order to get integrated CAD and CAM, because we were did a lot of manufacturing, a lot of NC programming. The company I worked for, we designed and manufactured production equipment, capital machinery for the food and chemical processing industry. And I worked in the food machinery division. For us, it was primarily bakery equipment for commercial bakeries, large commercial operations. In fact, this part of the country, Hartford, it was an activity I was involved here. In 1 year, I made 27 trips from Saginaw, Michigan, where I worked, to Hartford, Connecticut, for a big plant that we were putting up. First National Stores. I think that's a brand that's still out there in New England. And for one of their bakeries, I worked on a lot of the equipment there. And so that's the sort of stuff that we did. And I was a designer, machine designer, and I used this software. Then in 1980, this looked like, gee, it was more fun than working, and I had an opportunity to join, at that time, McDonnell Douglas, who was frantically hiring people because they had decided to try to make Unigraphics into a commercial success, and so they were out hiring people who had real-world experience in the area of CAD, and so I took advantage of that, relocated from Michigan to California, uprooted my family, moved out there, and joined the McDonnell Douglas, and I worked in sales for 7 years. At the end of the 7 years, I had an opportunity to move over to R&D, and I took that opportunity, and I'm glad that I did, because I've been working in the R&D group ever since then. Now, I don't write this stuff, I break it. So the only coding I've ever done is in grip. Played around with snap a little bit. I still prefer grip, simply because I haven't all worked out as to how it works. So now I work in the R&D group as part of the product marketing group with Sam and Scott and several other people. And part of our job is to go to groups like this and to put a public face on our products. And there are people that do, for Team Center and manufacturing and so on and so forth. My specialty is NX. Now I'm going to ask a couple questions now. How many people here are running 10 in any fashion whatsoever, whether it's in production or you just have it installed and you're testing it? Oh, good. How about 9? 2. 8, 5. 8. 7, 5? Ooh, only a couple. when I was in Cincinnati last week, we had a lot of people put their hand up at 7.5. So I don't know if it's the water or what.
New England.
Pardon?
New England.
Yeah, well, could be. Well, actually, that's an interesting piece of trivia. The New England Regional Users Group is actually probably the oldest regional user group. John can probably remember when we used to have the fall workshop.
Yep.
Remember we had the big Unigraphics meeting in the spring, always in California in February, because everybody wanted to go to California in February, you know. And in the fall, we would hold a 3-day workshop in usually Boston area, and it was focused, you know, no big marketing spiels. It was really a workshop. And when that kind of went out of sort of vogue, the people in the New England area, since they had been participating so much over the years in this, that the kind of the regional group kind of picked up, and we continued to come out here for one-day events. And actually, I think if you actually look back into history, I think it would be safe to say that the New England group probably was the prototype for the regional groups that we now have around the country. So you can be proud of that. There is a heritage here that goes back as far as the product does. Okay, a couple other questions. Now these are ones that I can't really do anything with today, but I just do it for interest. How many people here are running dual monitors, or at least 2? Sometimes I have people out there saying they got 3 and 4 monitors, which is amazing. Okay, how many people here are running high resolution monitors? Now that means 4K and 5K. Oh good, a couple of hands. I've only had 3 hands. I've only had 1 so far. I'll bet if 3 years from now, if somebody asks that same question, almost everybody will be raising their hands, because the move towards high resolution, once you've actually run NX on a high resolution monitor, you will not want to go back. The reason I ask questions about that is that while I can't really demonstrate that here, I just want to let everybody know that we are putting enhancements into the software in order to address these. Now, dual monitors, we kind of lucked out. They just simply worked. Now, yeah, there were some caveats and there was some restrictions and so on, but we didn't really have to do a whole lot with NX to make it work. However, starting in NX 10, we actually started putting some enhancements in specifically for people that had dual monitors. For example, those of you who are not on 10 yet, haven't been informed of this yet, but for example in 10 you can take the resource bar and move it over to the second monitor so that the navigators fly out onto the second monitor. You don't have to float them, undock them and drag them over individually, which just messes up that other monitor anyway, so it kind of defeats the purpose of having all these undocked navigators. Also, you can take the entire ribbon as one object and undock it and move it over to the second monitor as well, if you'd like to free up the primary monitor with as much graphics as possible without losing the full ribbon. You can obviously go into the full screen mode and then activate the ribbon, pop it up. But this way, you sort of get the best of both worlds. In terms of the high resolution monitor, we started in 10, but it's really NX11 where we really put the effort in, is that we basically have switches now. You can just basically switch the user interface. Whatever you have set up, whatever you decided to make it look like, you'll be able to toggle it to either 150% or 200%. So we just make everything that much bigger. Those of us who've been using the software for a long time have already experienced the problem that you have when you go to high resolution monitors. You've experienced where you had lower resolution monitors years and years ago, and as the screen display kept getting higher and higher resolution, the icons kept getting smaller and smaller. And for those of us who are kind of age sort of limited, those really got really small. So we've been playing around with icon size for a while, but as you can imagine what it looks like on a 4K, and like I said, Apple now is insisting that they're 5K, so the rumor is we might not be stopping at 4K, they might be actually going to 5K, it's going to become the norm. And so we have this 200%, you just take everything you see in just one switch, everything is at 200%. And we're building roles and everything for that. Also for touchscreen, how many people are using touch devices of any kind, whether that's a desktop, laptop, or an actual so-called tablet? Okay, again, with NX11, we're putting in specific roles designed for large touchscreen, like a desktop type touchscreen, as well as the the portable or mobile touchscreen, not necessarily a tablet, but the mobile touchscreen. And again, those roles are being developed for that. You saw Sam give a little bit of a presentation as what it looks like. And again, the idea is to give it an interface that's just more, used with a pen, with a, either your finger or a stylus. Okay, what I'm doing here is an update, but it's actually on 11. So I'm not allowed to publish the fact that I'm demoing 11 because it has not yet been announced. So this does not constitute an announcement. You heard me say it. Don't anybody say that, gee, Siemens has announced NX11. No, that's a big marketing type thing, and they'll do that sometime either very late in the year or early next year. What I'm doing is I'm demonstrating the functionality. Now, speaking of 11, how many people, anybody here participate in beta testing this year? Besides Scott. Okay, beta testing was interesting this year. Actually, we've been seeing a trend, and that is that we had less PRs and more ERs, which I think is a good move. What happened was that we actually are working quite hard to get our first-time quality up. And so the beta testers actually found less PRs that they had to go chase down. And that allowed them to spend more time thinking about what they were seeing on the screen and start asking for how you could do things differently. So the ER count went up, which we think was good. In fact, we held several special sessions where we sat down and literally picked their brains about, you've seen this, is there something you'd like us to do more? And a lot of the ideas that they were throwing out were things that we were able to put into the product. In one of the demonstrations today, I'll point out a few of the things that they asked for and that we've been able to put in since then. So it was probably the best anybody who ever gets a chance to participate in beta, take advantage of it. It'll be your best opportunity to ever have an influence over the direction of the product because it's still malleable at that time. We can still mold it a little bit because even though we've got specs all written, there are sometimes good ideas that just come up and say, you're right, we should do that, and we sit down and do it. In fact, in one session, the programmer, we were giving the presentation, the product manager was presenting it, this is the new expression dialogue, he was presenting it, and as ideas were being tossed out, one of the lead programmer on that project was sitting there with his laptop, and he was literally coding in real time. And he was the one who actually got most of the stuff that people were asking for into the product. So this is really a rare opportunity, and anybody gets a chance, take advantage of it. Okay, update report on 10, which 10 is our current release that's out, so I'm going to update report on that. Okay, we were in beta testing last May at phase 13. Watch the phase counts, because that actually is something that's of interest here. It was released in December. We got it in just before the end of the year so we could get a check in the box for December for 2014. Of course, that means now is that there will be no product release in 2015 because 11 won't be out until after the first of the year. There were 24 phases. The first maintenance release was in February. Now, I know a lot of people wait for that first maintenance release before they even consider installing a version of software. And we understand that, and we appreciate this situation. However, we really do appreciate the early adopters. These are the people who install the 0 release. Because we need to get that early feedback. Yes, we can do beta testing, yes, we can do internal testing, and so on and so forth, but until we actually see the product running in a production environment, under your version of Teamcenter, so on and so forth, we don't really get all the chance to see whether the product is worthy or not. So those early adopters really help us to get those early maintenance releases actually out there. But we again appreciate those people who wait for those maintenance releases. Now the second maintenance release was in July, so if you're waiting for a maintenance release, what are you waiting for? We're already up to number 2. And the third maintenance release is going to be out very, very shortly, within the next couple of weeks. And that will be it. There's only going to be 3 maintenance releases. That's another thing. We are trying to get our first-time quality high enough so that we don't have to have more than 3 maintenance releases. Now, somebody says, well, why don't you have none? Well, any CAM users in the room? Yeah, you might have noticed that the CAM people seem to be putting their enhancements into the first and second maintenance release. Not so much the third, but usually the first and second maintenance. So they've kind of taken over those maintenance releases as really enhancement releases for them, which is fine. So obviously we're going to be continuing to do that. But we are gonna try to limit it to 3 in the future because it's, for 2 reasons. One, we actually think our first time quality is getting better, and so therefore we don't need as many maintenance releases. And secondly, that frees our people up earlier so that they can be working on the next version so as to make sure that its first time quality is high, and to make sure that we get the functionality and the projects done that we've promised people. So, status of 11, the beta testing was in August and was done at phase 15 instead of 13.